talking about how to take notes in college.
Taking good notes in college is really important to be successful in your classes. So we're gonna show an example notebook, and let's take a look.
Okay, so the important thing to note is that we use notebooks, not loose leaf paper. It helps keep everything you need in one spot, and we also like to color code our notebooks for each class depending on the color that we chose of our binder or the color that we read in our planners with for the class.
This was for Calc 2, and we always use green for math. You don't have to use green, but that's just what we do.
Yeah, so most of the time for math classes we'll just write our own notes, but I did have a math professor that did give us like templates for notes. So if your professor does give you slides or handouts ahead of time that you can print out, I suggest doing that just because it's easier to annotate in class and write everything on the slide, and then also pay attention to like what the professor is saying.
So up here I have the title. I normally put the date so you know when it was done, or if they're like, oh, the exam's going to be from this date to this date, you have a record of when this was, and then you just take the notes. I color-coded it. I wrote the example in pencil, but the title in blue pen, and then if any other color pen was needed, then I used that. Formulas are generally in black.
Okay, so it's also important to know that I know a lot of high schools require you to use the Cornell note style, where you have to write the question on the side, write a summary at the bottom, which honestly that's a lot of work, and it's definitely not required in college for you to have to do that. So just take notes in the way that works for you and will help you to remember the information the best.
You can use abbreviations and paraphrase when you want, but don't use abbreviations you won't remember. I don't think I really use abbreviations, but my one professor, over here it says definition, she would put D, but I would forget what the D meant, so I just wrote out definition. So don't use abbreviations if you don't know what they mean.
It's also important to remember that if your professor takes the time to write out an example or show you an example in class, the chances are that it's going to be really similar to a problem you're going to have on the exam. So make sure, yeah, Amanda has all her examples really lined out here, all color-coded, hopefully with the correct answers. Just make sure you write out everything neatly in your notebook so that you can refer to it later, especially if you can have an open note test, which is probably going to be common for a lot of people going remote this semester. That way you can just have a good record of all your class work.
Make sure you mark things in your notes that you don't understand. I don't think I have any of those in there, but you can highlight or mark things that you don't understand to ask about after the lecture, or you can ask right away. It doesn't really matter.
You can also highlight like keywords or terms that you have to make them to make them highlighted, to make them stand out more. I also, in high school, I used to highlight like the section names or like the title of my notes just so that it would stand out more to me. Because I like using pen in my notes just because I don't like scribbles.
This has an underline. I don't think I used highlighters for math, but I had an underline. Oh, look at that. Color coding is nice.
Something that I've never done before but would also kind of be helpful is if you know several people in a class, you could collaborate on a Google Doc and collaboratively take notes or ask each other questions. That way everybody has, it's just like a good way to be able to so you're not taking notes yourself.
You can also take extra notes by yourself from the textbook if you think that might be something that helps you. I know Samantha doesn't do that, but I like doing that because I like having my own set of notes that I wrote.
I sometimes, though, most of my professors have given me, like, handed out notes, or, like, notes I printed out and I annotated them, and sometimes when I'm studying, I'll go through the book and, like, annotate and add notes from the book onto my notes that aren't included. That's especially helpful when you're making cheat sheets or, like, there's formulas that you didn't see in class, but perhaps you still need to know, like, simpler formulas that, like, are kind of fundamental.
Also, when you're reviewing your notes, you can highlight in a different color than your original highlights so you can see, like, what you understand now compared to what you didn't understand then, or if there's something that you're still confused about.
Something that I like to do from my notes is to make a math study sheet of important information. So anything from formulas and equations, to key terms or just like important reminders about basically anything, like anything you need to maybe know for your exam. I usually use it as a quick reference sheet to review before exams, or I've been able to use them in my exams that I had after we went remote in March.
Well, also, again, you can use different colored pens like I use. Samantha doesn't like using different colored pens because it's messy, but if different colored pens help you, then you can use that.
If you have a literature class, which a lot of people, I think it's at least required for you to have at least one literature class as like a gen ed. So if you have a literature class, you should print out the passage if it's provided to you electronically and annotate it as you read. So like asking questions or analyzing plot, characters, and themes. You can also write key plot elements on a separate sheet of paper or record any favorite quotes or questions you have while you're reading. If you're reading a physical book and you don't actually want to write in the book, then it would help to take notes in a notebook like this and just color code all kinds of things, or use different colored sticky flags within the books to highlight characterization, themes, quotes, or anything that you would actually take notes on. Because I know a lot of times professors have you refer back to the passages and you have to use like 3 quotes from the passage, and it's hard to go through the book and just like search for that one quote, but if you mark it, then you'll be able to remember exactly where it's at.
Another thing that you could do, we never really did, but you can have a separate notebook. This one has a notebook. It has notes for examples and notes. But you could have 2 separate notebooks, one for notes and one for examples. And if that helps you stay more organized, then you can do that. We've never really done it because notes happen in class so fast. But with remote learning, that might be something that you're interested in, and if it works for you, go ahead and do it. So if you have any questions about organizing your notes, or if you want to like give tips for organizing notes, drop them in the comment box below.
And be sure to check out our other videos that are part of our school series. Thanks for watching.
See you next time.